we should worry about government, not corporate surveillance. It seems to me there's really no difference, right? Because any corporation, I mean, you mentioned Ring has been essentially used as a surveillance tool by police departments across the country. There's actually like a third party that essentially networks these things and then provides it to police departments. But I would imagine that the NSO group that did Pegasus, that they could sell it to anybody. I mean, in fact, corporations are increasingly being used by government agencies as a way of getting around legal restrictions on what they can accumulate, what kind of data, and they just go and buy it from these corporations instead of setting up the surveillance mechanism themselves.
That's totally right. Corporations don't have to adhere to the strictures of our Constitution. I think something like 80% of our intelligence operations have been outsourced to private entities for a long time. And I see them as working hand in hand. I think the perception among some people is, I don't want, hands off me. I don't want to be spied on. I don't want government interference. And yet those same people aren't as suspicious, or maybe aren't as aware of how hand in hand big business is, in fact, with government agencies. I know that years ago, I used to work at the National Lawyers Guild, and we did a lot of work defending or observing protesters at mass demonstrations and rallies after 9/11. And we were acutely aware of the many different ways that the government, with private support, was monitoring and spying on activists. And I think I became interested in this field in part because of that, but the more I read about it, the more I saw that it's not just activists, it's all facets of society, especially with the commodification of our data, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Corporations will essentially do whatever they can do to get more information about us, because that information translates into profits for their bottom line. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that they are so interconnected that people need to start being equally suspicious and vigilant about how corporations do intrude on our lives. Again, in a more kind of wild, wild west fashion, given that they're not highly regulated, and privacy protections, including in how our devices are actually built. They're built with an eye toward making us more addicted to clicking more and more, and to linking to more sources so more people get our information.
And we should say that there is no, I mean, I think people assume that if it's illegal for the I don't know, the DEA or the highway patrol or whomever it is, doesn't matter what agency, if it's illegal for them to surveil and get this information without a warrant or without any cause, they assume that it would be illegal for them to buy it from somebody who is allowed to get it by signing off a term of service sheet, right? I mean, we put these apps on, I get, on my computer and, or on my phone, and it sends this data, and these agencies can buy it. There's no restriction on that whatsoever. I don't think people, appreciate that dynamic.
That's exactly right. It's sort of, you see on old police procedurals, the lawyer says, well, I can't get that information, or the police officer says, I don't have a warrant, but they find a way around it, so they get it through another means that is legal. We see that kind of end run being done every time we click on something. So I hope that people just being more aware of that. And I think we're getting the cookie warnings every time we go to a site. People have the option of making a choice. we're coming around to sensitizing individuals to take more control over their personal information. But as you say, if we want to go to a site and we need information quickly, we click on the I approve. We click on the terms of service without reading the fine details. And I think there has to be a seismic shift in business practices in that respect.
I mean, you were one of, I guess, myth 11 is metadata doesn't reveal much about me. But why is that not true?
Well, metadata, or what some people call data about data, is really the nature and the origins of a piece of information. So the NSA may say, we collected 1 million phone calls, but we didn't listen in. But what they did get was, I phoned the abortion clinic. A day later, I phoned a certain doctor 3 times. Then I went and visited another I called a suicide hotline. So with that information, researchers have shown they were able to identify individuals with particularity just out of watching the pattern of information. And what happens is algorithms are applied to the metadata that sift through and make, reduce all those connections very quickly. So it becomes an effective telescope into your activities and your associations. And through your associations, they can make determinations about, what political affiliation you may be, conservative, liberal, if you're religious or not. Information that I think applies with all the other information. One of the dangers is it can be used to discriminate against us in any range of healthcare, housing, benefits, jobs. That's one of the overarching reasons that we don't want everyone to have our personal data, is we don't know how it's going to be used against us now or in the future.
And we should be clear, that the aggregate of personal data, even if it's not down to the individual, can then be applied back on you and discriminate against you because you are part of a group. I mean, we saw that in the context. I mean, we saw this frankly in the 1930s with redlining, right? I mean, this was we're going to take the more or less the metadata of a certain neighborhood. That metadata is going to say, like, okay, this is going to be redlined. This is an insecure place in which to provide loans. Sometimes it was based on race. Sometimes it was based on other factors. And then that red line data not only makes it harder for you as an individual to get a loan to buy a car or to buy a home, it also means that you're very much more likely to have a highway being built through that area during the 1950s when we start to expand the federal highway system. It also means that you're more likely to have a power plant put there, which means that you're more likely to get asthma if you're a kid. I mean, it just continues on like this because this data can end up discriminating against you because you're part of a group that comes out of this metadata. All right. So lastly, you write, we've touched on some of this, but the myth is that there's nothing I can do to stop surveillance. We can be more discriminating in when we sign off one of those cookie things, but what else can we do?
Well, a real sore spot for me is the fact that our leaders are ignorant about this topic. I think we need to start reading the newspaper. I read the business section every morning. Start taking note of things that you can write to your elected officials about expressing a viewpoint. Write an op-ed or a letter to the editor. Start talking to your friends about these things. Pick an issue that you care about. Support organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation or whatever your cause may be that really specialize in electronic freedom, privacy, empowering individuals with knowledge so that they can then take action. I think we as a society can't be complacent at this point. Get Signal on your phone. Just be aware of the many ways every day that you are under assault by marketers and by others. And I think, go to a crypto party, meet other people who may not know that much about technology, but others are willing to share. We're all in this together. It's a virtual community in many ways. And I think that it's incumbent on us to force our leaders to become more educated. Our judges need to get out of the typewriter age, learn. I mean, so many unfair decisions have been made in court that are related to cybersecurity or individuals who have experimented on the web. I just think we have to shift the whole conversation and not be afraid to talk about technology.
Well, the book is I Have Nothing to Hide and 20 Other Myths About Surveillance and Privacy. We'll put a link to that on majority.fm. Heidi Bogosian, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.